On the last episode of the Keepsake box, we jumped into Ron's truck and headed downtown. I was excited. We never really went downtown unless we were going to the grocery store. Ron turned up the volume on the radio. To my surprise, rap music was playing on the station. He looked at me with the expression of an embarrassed schoolboy. "Don't tell your mother," he said. He smiled, and I smiled back. Ron started mouthing the words to the song, verbatim. He looked cool, like the guys that lean back in their seats while driving. We arrived at the restaurant, and I opened my door. "Wait," said Ron. "Close the door." I did as I was told. He walked around to my side and opened the door. "Remember," he said, "when you start dating, any respectable boy will open your door." Ron took my hand and helped me out of the truck. We walked towards the restaurant, and he opened the door when we reached our destination. The waiter escorted us to a table towards the back. Ron pulled out a chair and motioned for me to take a seat. He ordered omelets and orange juice for both of us. I know it sounds crazy, but I felt like we were on a date. The experience was reminiscent of the couples I saw on television, and I liked that. We talked and laughed throughout breakfast, and I thought about how I wanted my future boyfriend to be just like Ron. Present day, I realized that many of them were. We left the restaurant. Ron, again, opened all of the doors for me. It's unfortunate that impressing me was that easy. Chapter 9, Yes, Daddy. Narrated by Shandora Warren. Music by Epidemic Sound. When we returned home, Ron sent me into the house. He stayed behind to retrieve some bags out of the truck. I went into my bedroom and looked in the mirror. It's crazy how something as simple as a hairstyle can make such a difference. In that moment, I realized what Mom meant when she said that I was the type of girl that had to look up on herself. It all made sense. I was about to change clothes when Ron walked into my bedroom carrying several bags. He didn't knock, of course. He placed the bags on my bed and instructed me to open them. I opened one of the bags and I was astonished. Prior to that moment, I didn't think my day could possibly get any better. Boy, was I wrong. "What are you waiting for?" asked Ron. "Try 'em on." I retrieved one of the items and I still couldn't believe my eyes. Jeans. Ron had purchased jeans for me. I understand how ridiculous that excitement may seem to someone else, but I hadn't ever worn jeans before. Grandma only wore dresses, and she insisted that I do the same. Even though Mom wore pants, she had allowed Grandma to make another decision for me. I stood motionless, waiting for Ron to leave. I guess he sensed my apprehension because he told me that he needed to see the clothes on me. He needed to make sure that they fit properly. I was fully aware that he could have stepped out into the hallway until I was dressed. Actually, he should have, but I decided against voicing my opinion. I didn't want to anger him and ruin the wonderful day that we'd had up to that point. I dumped all of the clothes into the bed. I figured I'd have to be undressed for a shorter period of time if I matched the outfits in advance. Or maybe Ron would grow tired of waiting and tell me to call him when I was done. But he didn't. He patiently waited as I matched the shirts and pants together. Once I finished my pairings, I tried on the first outfit. I put together a pair of blue jeans and a multicolored shirt. It was a short-sleeved polo shirt with 3 buttons. I tucked the shirt into the jeans and buttoned it all the way up to the top. Ron walked over and unbuttoned the top too. "This way people can see your necklace," he said. I felt strange having my shirt unbuttoned. Grandma always stressed the importance of modesty. She would not be pleased. "Turn around and look at yourself," said Ron. "Now don't you look as good as those other girls?" I shook my head to signal yes, and I truly felt that I did. Ron looked at me, and I could see the disapproval in his expression. I knew I had to say it. "Yes, Daddy," I said. He smiled and told me to try on another outfit. I did as I was told. After carefully placing the shirt and jeans on the bed, I picked up the second shirt. It was also multicolored, but it was loose and silk with irregular patterns. I know that sounds tacky, but it was the 90s. Unlike the first shirt, it was a button-up. I turned towards the mirror to make sure I'd aligned the buttons properly. I buttoned the top 2 buttons when I saw Ron walking towards me through the mirror. I assumed that I was committing another fashion faux pas that Ron was about to fix. I thought about how much more predictable my former wardrobe was. I never had to think that hard. As Ron was approaching, I asked him if Mom would approve of me wearing pants and having my hair down. "Just let me worry about that," he said. Ron stood behind me and adjusted my collar. He moved my hair aside and started kissing my neck. I stood there, frozen in place. Ron put his hands under my shirt and rubbed my upper body. He whispered in my ear, "There are a lot of things that your mom won't understand. I'll deal with her." He turned me around and kissed me, just as he had the night before. That time, I knew what to do without having to be instructed. He rubbed my body, also as he had the night before, but feeling his hands on my exposed skin gave me a completely different sensation. Ron pulled away from me and looked squarely into my eyes. "This is our little secret, right?" I nodded to indicate that it was our secret and said, "Yes, Daddy." "It's very simple," he said. "You take care of me and I'll take care of you. Understand?" I repeated my previous affirmation. "Yes, Daddy." "Glad we're on the same page," he said. Ron smiled and walked towards the door. "Let's watch a movie," he said. I nodded and told him that I would be out soon. I retrieved a t-shirt and a skirt from my drawer. "Looks like you'll need some pants for around the house," said Ron. Ron exited, leaving me to replay the situation in my head. I knew that things were far less innocent than I'd originally maintained. It was wrong and I felt guilty. But I also felt good. Additionally, cooperating with Ron had its perks. He had basically said that in so many words. I went back to my justification process. We weren't doing anything that wrong. He was just preparing me for future interactions with boys. I told myself that Ron was just looking out for me, just like when he bought me jeans and got my hair done. In truth, he was buying my silence. But the sad truth is, my self-esteem was so low that he could have silenced me for free. I wrapped my hair and headed to the living room. Ron, who usually sat in his recliner, positioned himself on the opposite end of the couch that I usually sat on. "Come here. I don't bite," he said. I walked over to the other end of the couch and sat beside him. He lifted his right arm and told me to lie on his chest. I did as I was told. After I was comfortably positioned, Ron lowered his arm and placed his hand on my hip. I curled my legs up very close to my body. I felt secure but confused. I felt like Ron's girlfriend. Well, it was how I imagined it would feel to be a girlfriend. Not that I had any real-life examples. I hadn't ever seen Grandma with a man. And prior to Ron, I hadn't seen Mom with any men either. Mom and Ron weren't a very affectionate couple. I saw Mom stare at Ron with a look of adoration, but he never seemed to reciprocate. I saw them do pecks on the lips, but I hadn't ever seen him kiss her the way he kissed me. I certainly hadn't ever seen them cuddle on the couch. We watched television for a while, and nothing felt uncomfortable or out of place. At 4 o'clock, Ron told me that I needed to start dinner. I was so comfortable that I completely lost track of the time. Mom would be home at 6 o'clock and would expect dinner to be prepared. There was ground beef in the refrigerator that had been taken out a couple of days prior. I made a meatloaf with mashed potatoes and string beans, a meal that Ron loved. Mom came home on time and things looked just as they always did. Ron gave her the usual peck on the lips, and she went into their bedroom. I went into the living room and waited for her to exit. Just as I sat, Mom called out to me, "Londa, I need you to do something." When I reached her room, Mom advised me that she had left her purse in the car and asked if I could go out to retrieve it. I did as she asked. As I opened the car door, I smelled the unmistakable scent of French fries. French fries. Why did I smell French fries? I snooped around and found that there was a fast food bag under the driver's side seat. I located a receipt in the bag and searched for a date. I wanted to be wrong. Really, I did. But sure enough, Mom had eaten a fast food combo prior to arriving home. I'm not sure which thing made me the angriest. Maybe it was the fact that I had slaved over a hot stove and she wasn't considerate enough to eat the food that I prepared. Maybe it was the fact that Ron and I were cut out of the equation. She ate alone while constantly professing that we were pressed for money. At any rate, both explanations were problematic for me. And even though I was annoyed, I stuffed the bag back under the seat and pretended to never have even seen it. I went back into the house and proceeded to make our plates. I knew Mom had just eaten, but I wanted to see if she would admit it. I placed the plates on the table and waited for Mom and Ron to exit the bedroom. "Shelonda! Shelonda!" It was Mom again. She refuses to let me have any peace, I thought. I walked into their bedroom. Mom and Ron were wearing matching smiles. "Well, let me see it," said Mom. In my aggravation about Mom's food run, I completely forgot about having gotten my hair done. I grabbed a large comb from Mom's dresser and unwrapped my hair. "It's beautiful," she exclaimed. I was astonished. Mom hadn't ever called me ugly, but she hadn't ever referred to me as beautiful in any capacity. It made me smile, but I was still a little annoyed with her. I changed the subject. "Are you guys ready to eat?" I asked. "Sure," said Ron. Mom flashed a guilty grin. It was the type a child gives when they've been caught in a lie. I went into the kitchen and placed Ron's plate on the table. I grabbed Mom's plate and started walking towards the dining room. I stopped in my tracks and decided to put more potatoes on her plate. If she insisted on pretending to be hungry, I decided to make her stuff herself like a goldfish. I placed Mom's plate in front of her. I ate my food, intermittently pausing to see if Mom was eating. She poked around her meatloaf and ate a few spoonsful of mashed potatoes. Suddenly, she stood and started running towards the bathroom. Mom slammed the bathroom door and pretended to vomit. I didn't have any clear-cut evidence that she was pretending, but I firmly believed that to be the case. Making matters worse, Ron ran to the bathroom to check on her. Of course, she told him that she was okay, but she never unlocked the bathroom door. I was completely annoyed with her. And if I have to be honest, I was jealous that it was so easy for her to get Ron's attention. When Mom exited the bathroom, she was dabbing her face with the washcloth. "I think I need to lie down," she said. Everything in me wanted to call her out, but of course I didn't. I couldn't. I wondered if that was Mom's everyday routine. Was that why she was always too sick to eat? I remember thinking how remarkable it was that she hadn't lost any weight with all the vomiting she was doing. I suddenly realized why that was so. I decided I should check her car for fast food bags every day. I did, and I found bags every time, but that's another story. Anyway, I finished eating my food and started clearing the table. Ron exited the bedroom and completed his meal as well. He watched television as I cleaned the kitchen. I was annoyed with every single thing by that point, and I simply wanted to be left alone. I finished my cleaning and decided to banish myself to my bedroom for the duration of the night. I removed my diary from under my mattress and started writing about my day. It was one of the few times that I was excited about my writing. I thought back to my day with Ron. It was magical. I thought the salon would be the highlight of my day, but Ron had far surpassed that experience. As crazy as it sounds, I was able to completely take Mom's role out of the equation. I didn't think she deserved to be there. She didn't deserve to be with him. I think that was the moment when I decided to out-woman Mom. That wasn't my exact conscious thought at the time. I just thought about ways to get more of Ron's attention than she got. I thought of ways to be more needed than he needed her. I also think that day set the stage for my interactions with other women. After that point in time, I would constantly try to put myself in a position to out-woman every woman I encountered. That thought process would be in my emotional keepsake box for a very long time. I relived the day in my mind until I was tired enough to fall asleep. I woke up the next morning and prepared myself for a typical Sunday. I cooked breakfast for everyone and washed the dishes. I showered and got dressed, still marveling at my hair. Once again, Mom was too sick to go to church. Normally, I would have been annoyed. But on that day, I was happy that she would not be accompanying us. I wanted some time alone with my boyfriend. We went to church as usual, but I felt less awkward that day. I felt powerful, like I meant something to someone. I wasn't a shrinking violet that day. I wanted to be seen, not by everyone, but by Ron. Ron preached a powerful sermon as usual. He preached about the obligations of marriage, and it felt as though he was speaking directly to me. He who finds a wife finds a good thing. I imagine Ron finding me as if he wasn't already married to my mother. Ron finished his sermon, and we stayed behind to greet parishioners as they exited. That was the part I hated the most, but it was my duty as a wife in training. After church, Ron and I went to the shack just as we had the week prior. Things were a lot more comfortable that time. I ate snacks on the couch as Ron told me stories of his childhood. I sat attentively and hung on to his every word. He told me that he liked talking to me and that Mom never really listened to him. I smiled on the inside, thinking I had found a way to out-woman her. We sat for approximately an hour, and then it was time to go home. Before leaving the shack, Ron told me how pretty I was and how I better show Toya Boone and her friends up at school the next day. Oh yeah, I thought. In all the excitement about everything else, I had forgotten about my upcoming reveal. I smiled at that thought. Ron kissed me before leaving the shack, and we walked hand in hand down the path leading to the truck. I was ecstatic. It seemed that everything was falling in place for me, even though Ron was my mother's husband. When we arrived home, I cooked a huge Sunday dinner and prepared myself for my upcoming day at school. I was ready to show them who I was, and it was all thanks to my daddy. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow Shenny Tells a Story on Facebook and Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. If you're interested in purchasing books by Shandora Warren, they're all available on Amazon. I sincerely appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks for helping me to create the world that I want to see. Oh yeah, you're welcome. Shine, little girl.